Welcome everyone to today's Arborist Call. Today is the 19th of September. And as Tojo mentioned, for today's agenda, we'll do a very quick round of updates, both from the core teams and on research and implementation efforts. So this is so we can have plenty of time to discuss Zcash deprecation and hopefully finalize the design for CLI wallet architecture. So what is the Arborist Call? The Arborist Call is a bi-weekly call where Zcash protocol contributors meet up to discuss upgrade timelines and process, protocol research and development efforts, design and implementation of new protocol features, and identify blockers and unresolved issues. And the purpose of this call is to try to make Zcash protocol development accessible to interested parties and to provide more transparency for everyone. So if you want to participate in this call, you can register to attend at zcasharborist.org. And if you want to become more involved and present during this call, you can email us at arboristcall@setfund.org and we will provide you with a presentation slot. Outside of the Arborist Call, you can participate in the Zcash community in a number of ways. You can apply to one of the grant programs, or you can take part in community discussions, which happen in the Zcash R&D Discord, or in the Zcash community forum. And there are clickable links for all these at zcasharborist.org. So with all that said, let's start with some core team updates. First of all, NU6. So does anyone from ECC or the Zcash Foundation want to give us a brief update on maybe how testnet activation went and how it's going so far?
So testnet activation went fine, except that so I think a lot of people are having problems syncing on testnet, and we're not exactly sure why that is. I think perhaps the connectivity in the testnet network is a bit too sparse at the moment. We don't have any evidence that there's actually a consensus bug. But we need to sort out that connectivity issue and get testnet sort of running reliably for everyone. Let's see what else. We have released the some new versions of the Zcash SDKs. Let's see, that supports Strad. What new features are supported in those versions? You know,
relating to NU6. Nothing. Yeah,
right. Okay.
There'll be some time later for the Zcash D and wallet SDKs.
Right.
So
okay.
I think,
so for NU6 specifically, the current versions are. The current version of Zcash does not support NU6, so we know that we need to put this out.
To be clear, it does support NU6. It just does not have the testnet or mainnet activation heights set, but that is planned for the next release of the Rust crates.
Yes, but it won't actually work until we release that. I think that's everything except for the least authority audit. So the last thing I heard about that was that they, so least authority said that they would deliver the report yesterday, and we're still waiting for that.
great. Thank you, Darema. Alfredo wants to say something, I think.
Yeah, in regards to what Emma was saying, the testnet issue was nobody mining. You know, Conrado and Aria has local nodes that start mining, but we at the foundation are trying to make a persistent node that can mine, because when nobody mines, then the blockchain can't make progress, and that's one of the issues we have with the testnet.
I mean, I think Zcash D nodes are still having problems syncing or connecting to other nodes. So my node, for example, only has 2 connections, and is stuck at 2975999. So, which is just before the NU6 activation. So that there is some kind of issue there that we need to investigate.
Okay.
Roger?
Would the 100 block rollback limit have anything to do with this?
I mean, I reset my node to a previous snapshot, so, and it's still not syncing properly. So I don't think that might be the issue for some people, but it's not the primary issue. And we can, so for that issue specifically, we can put out a version of Zcash D that has a long rollback to the fork point. But until we've figured out what else is going on, that by itself wouldn't be sufficient.
In the interest of keeping the call snappy, and I think let's not try and find solutions to
Agreed.
anything being stuck. Paco, you want to say something?
Yeah, would asking like zec.rocks or Zcash to set up nodes to mine testnet be helpful or not yet?
I mean, for the time being, it's sufficient for ZF to do it. I think it's just we need to investigate a bit more.
It's also
you very
likely
much.
that whoever or whatever was running nodes to mine testnet previously just didn't see and didn't upgrade to NU6 and may still be
Possibly.
mining on pre-NU6 off on their own branch. So, yeah.
Thank you, Strad. I just want to add one NU6 update from the foundation side, and that's that we received the preliminary report from the East Authority on NU6, and it's mainly inconsistencies with comment between what the comments are and what the code does, and just the consensus rule. So we'll be creating issues to fix that documentation soon. Let's move on, if everyone's okay, on to updates from the Zcash Foundation. I think Marek was doing that today.
The update is going to be brief this time. In terms of merged PRs and new functionality, we added 2 new RPCs, namely stop and generate, and refactored 1 more RPC. And then the regular stuff such as dependency updates, documentation refactorings, and CI improvements. And then, as Pili said, the initial version of the NU6 report came in, and it contains 2 findings. So far, they are classified as suggestions, and they are related to documentation and error handling. And that's all from me.
Thank you, Marek. Next up, the Electric Coin Company on Zcash D, Sashi and the wallet SDKs.
Okay, it's relatively little that needs to be done on Zcash D. We did investigate that, so there was a potential issue with tracking chain value pool balances after the NU6 upgrade, or rather for Zcash D 5.10.0, which supports NU6 on testnet, and that issue was being seen by one user on mainnet. So Strad and I, and previously Chris and I, looked very thoroughly at the changes there, and we can't see what is causing that, and it appears to be only one user. So we've asked the user more questions, but we don't think that that's a blocker or anything. For Zashi and the wallet SDK, Strad, can you do this?
Yeah, so on the wallet SDK and sides there. The main changes, well, the main changes coming in from the Rust backend are around changes to how scan progress is going to be exposed to users, to try and just give a bit more usefulness and fidelity to what syncing needs to happen before you can use your wallet in its current state versus discover history and other notes and things. There were also some bugs related to older Android API versions that were investigated and addressed. So like API 27. So hopefully no one's relying on those here, but we've kept that support for now. There were some other Android changes, mostly just I think on the refactoring side. Then there's a couple of new updates of Zashi rolling out near future. I forget which feature's been deployed, but that's not really relevant for Arborist Call. And in the next sort of thing that is from the wallet SDK side that's being looked at and worked on is the changes to how confirmations are chosen. So there's a draft in a zip 315 draft that describes some changes about how to basically make notes spendable more quickly while still retaining appropriate security. And we're working through the motions of implementing those to improve the user's experience of spending based on the Rust SDKs.
Thank you.
And keeping it snappy, that will do for now.
Great. Thank you, Strad and Darema. Let's move on to the research and implementation updates now. Let's start with Zcash shielded assets. Vivek, is it you giving us an update today?
Yeah, it's me. So, this week's update is also syncing with the monthly update that I've given on the forum. So I'll just quickly recap most of that. To start off, we basically completed work on Orchard, Libra Zcash, and the test vector scripts for the V6 transaction support. And we are currently working on moving forward with the Zebra additions for ZSAs on multiple fronts. We've been talking to Least Authority again regarding the audit of the Orchard ZSA protocol. So I think that should be starting pretty soon, and we'll support the team where necessary over the next few weeks as that goes on. On the zips front, we've addressed, I think, most of the critical issues that were there on the open issues on the zips repo. So there's still some work connected to recommended wallet behavior and stuff that I will work on, keeping the NU7 roadmap in mind. There are some open PRs on Halo 2 and Zcash node encryption that I think we are waiting feedback on. So that's regarding ZSAs. Regarding swaps and user control, which is the other grant that we have, we've made another pass through zip 228, which is the asset swap zip, before the implementation started. And then we began modifying the Orchard, the repo on our folks to make those implementation changes. So that's a work in progress. Regarding user control, we had a discussion with Darema, I think a couple of weeks back, to get their view on some of the directions we had in mind. So we've been putting ideas together towards getting that progress as well. So that's about it for now.
Great, thank you, Vivek. Next up, we have the Zcash Sustainability Fund. Is there anyone here to give an update on that today?
Yeah, I can give an update on that. So we are in the process of reworking the zips again. We've identified some issues that it's not worth going into just yet, but we'll explain that more in the coming days, I think. We've been working on getting a local test net working between Zcashd and Zebra, since we can't run end-to-end testing on Zebra in the same way that we can with Zcash. We wanted some mechanism to kind of validate the work we were doing to make sure that Zebra's happy with everything. So we've managed to do that with some tweaks, and I've described that a little bit in Discord, the patching that was needed to get that to work. But we're now in a situation where we're able to kind of essentially simulate RPC tests from Zcash and sort of send them over to Zebra and check that everything's working correctly there. So that's really useful. And finally, we've run into a tricky issue in the Rust code in Zebra that is to do with async lifetimes, and there's some complication there. We posted on Discord, and Conrado replied maybe that Aria can help, but we've not heard anything beyond that. So any help that can be offered or input would be greatly welcome. And that's it for us.
Sorry, what channel was that on?
That was on the Zebra channel.
Okay, I'll have a look.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah, we'll be pinging people again. We'll be poking them again about this. Yeah, definitely try to help you out there. Okay, so next up we have trailing finality. I'm not sure if anyone is here to give an update on that. Or we can let Alfredo ask a question also.
Yeah, sorry, in the previous topic, we are adding to Zebra the RPC test framework that Zcash used, the Python one. Maybe that's useful for your testing. We can discuss in the Discord, I guess, too. Yeah.
Yeah, feel free to jump in on the, I opened a thread under Node Dev in Discord called Zcash Zebra Local Testnet. Feel free to jump in there and we can discuss sort of what we've managed to do so far. Could be interesting to compare notes.
Sure. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfredo. Noah, just give a few more minutes to see if there's anyone that can talk about trailing finality updates today.
As far as I know, there's no update on that.
Okay, let's move on then. Frost. Conrado, I think that is.
Yeah, it's a short update. We are basically still working on the same things, on finishing refresh share functionality for the DKG and adding encryption authentication to the Frost server. Where our goal is to have like a production ready Frost server in the coming months. But that's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Conrado. Any open announcements before we dive into Zcash deprecation and the CLI wallet architecture? Cool.
Hey, yeah, I'm just announcing that I'm creating some GitHub boards to have another slice at the progress of the different development efforts like Zcash deprecation, hardware wallet support, block explorer support. So if anyone, I can share like this async so I don't take any more time from the meeting. And maybe those can be included on the notes that are published later.
Okay, thank you, Paco.
I guess I have one thing, which is that I appeared on a panel about privacy at TUM blockchain. That's the Technische Universität München. And yeah, took a pretty hard line on not compromising with surveillance or compliance protocols.
Okay, thank you, Darima. Jason, would you like to give an update on trailing finality? You can go back, or we can move on.
We can move on. There's no update this week.
Okay, Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so, oh, sorry, any more open announcements? Okay, let's move on to the main topic today, which is Zcash deprecation, with a focus on defining the CLI wallet architecture and also the related grant proposal from Cinco Labs. I'm not sure whether anyone wants to kick off the discussion on this.
I'll provide some context on this. So last year at ZCon, ECC and ZF agreed that we would collaborate on deprecating Zcash, and the sort of expectation was that we would work together on that in partnership in order to make it possible for Zcash to be sunset and effectively switched off. And the expectation was not that we would simply replicate all of Zcash's functionality into Zebra, but that we would potentially build new pieces of software if and when it was appropriate. And for example, a replacement for the Zcash full node CLI wallet was one of the things that we thought made sense to separate out from Zebra. If we fast forward some time, obviously the landscape has changed and there hasn't been a huge amount of progress towards that. And given that ECC have announced that they are no longer going to entertain any further functionality into Zcash, that means that any further significant upgrades to the Zcash protocol are blocked on us deprecating Zcash. So that's the sort of the background. We've been having discussions over, I think, the past 7 months with ECC about how best to go about deprecating Zcash and what a CLI wallet architecture might look like, and that's been kind of has not yet been finalized. In the meantime, Zingo have put forward a proposal for a grant to assist with the process of Zcash deprecation by helping to build a CLI wallet. I'm going to drop a couple of links into the chat so that people can see the GitHub issue where there's been some discussion about what the architecture might look like, and then a link to the Zingo Labs grant application so that people can review that. But ZCG have asked for feedback on whether what Zingo Labs are proposing makes sense and whether there's consensus amongst the ZF and ECC engineers that is a path worth pursuing, because obviously ZCG don't want to go ahead and fund the grant if it's not going to deliver something that makes sense to the core engineers. So on this call, I suggest that we see if we can agree on a high level architecture for the CLI wallet, and see if what Zingo Labs have proposed syncs in with that, and if not, what changes need to be made, and then finally, who is going to be responsible for building which components. And just to be clear, from our ZF's perspective, we have no previous experience of building a wallet. So in terms of architecture, we've been happy to defer to ECC, who in our view have got far more experience of building the wallets. And obviously we're happy to build whatever is required into Zebra in order to make that possible, with the caveat that we don't want to have a full wallet functionality all lumped into Zebra, because we think we would just end up back at the same starting point that we came from.
Yep.
So
the raise hand, yeah, the raise hand doesn't seem to be working, I think. So on the issue that you said that not much progress has been made, I mean, from my point of view, a huge amount of progress has been made on the Zcash that's necessary to for it to be a basis for a wallet that supports transparent functionality. So that has been done. But I agree that the next thing that we need to concentrate on is this wallet architecture.
Cool. I'm gonna see if I can seize control of the screen sharing and just to put up some diagrams. So this, I think, was the latest evolution of the architecture that was being discussed on that GitHub issue that I've just posted in chat.
Can you increase the size of it? Because I can't read that.
No. What I suggest you do is you click on the link and go to GitHub, and then you can.
I see. Okay.
And then you can look at it, and then so this has a separate binary named Zebroid in this instance, which runs alongside Zebra and then serves out to the actual CLI wallet, which is down here on the bottom left. We then Zingo have put forward a wallet architecture diagram, which is kind of an evolution or an adaptation of what Aria posted, slightly different. It includes a light wallet gRPC service, and there is some kind of overlap between the functionality required to serve a CLI wallet and the functionality that's inherent in a light wallet server. But one thing I would caution about here is scope creep and being clear about what our objectives are. Just because it would be good to have a new version of Light Wallet D that's not written in Go doesn't mean that that's something that we should block on in terms of deprecating Zcash D. So I think there's a few different sort of options sort of on the table. There have been some ideas that we should simply leverage all the functionality that already exists in the Libera Zcash libraries and effectively have the CLI wallet use the Light Wallet D protocol. There's also the option of having Zebra serve the necessary information out of this extra component. And I'll leave it open to the floor as to whether I've missed anything. But I think really we are.
Can I ask a few questions? Is it okay?
Sure.
I think Darema had their hand up first, though.
It's not showing me the state of my raised hand properly.
Okay.
So
I can see it.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have it. I didn't intend to have it. My hand up.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead, John.
Sorry. I have great difficulty following the architecture diagrams. Also when I click on the GitHub links to understand the scope of the conversation here. It's the difficulty more precisely is which part is a necessary diagram that will help the implementers do their job, and which part is a description of the outcome modules or areas of work that the people that don't work on them can understand what is being built, why is it I think if we all use the exact same mental model as the people that actually come and do the work, then it creates a screen of fog to really understand like what's being built and what are the pieces. No doubt I think the complexity is there, but then it's difficult to understand what goes on.
Okay, so I think part of the motivation for splitting into these separate pieces shown by the light yellow boxes is that we don't want a full node to do more than it strictly has to. And there are So the reason for that is that a full node is already very complicated. And also a full node has to directly talk to the network. So it's necessarily has some attack surface there. And so if it's also directly providing functionality for a wallet, then there's some risk there in terms of the keys that it holds and the potential for timing attacks and other side channel attacks against the wallet. So that's why we have this intermediate indexer, and then the indexer is providing the information that it's not needed for validation. It's not needed to be a full node, but it is needed for a wallet. And therefore, the wallet can make queries to the indexer, and there's some separation there from the full node. Yeah, I think
that's a really good clarification. Thank
okay,
you.
cool.
I
Yes.
immediately understand much more.
Yeah. To just give a slightly different way of thinking about it, which comes from the various discussions that we've had over those past months. The full node provides the consensus view of the network and just of what is necessary to ensure consensus. The concept of the indexer is to be to caching publicly relevant information. So stuff that doesn't depend on any individual wallet or is tied to an individual wallet, but that is aggregatable and derivable from the public state. And then we have, beyond that, you then have things that require knowing something about the wallet that is consuming that data. So in the current in the yellow box on the bottom left currently, there's what's called a scanner there, which could be a separable box itself, but it would necessarily have information about the wallet's viewing keys, which we don't want the indexer to have, because the indexer should, in terms of like a privacy boundary and a trust boundary, the indexer in the full node, we want to be able to operate on just on public information. And then so that it's clear when people are configuring and setting these up where their key material is and how it is used.
Excellent description. Yes.
So guys,
Thank you so
in the
much.
interest of moving towards a clear conclusion here,
well,
we were answering
yeah,
the
I know,
questions.
and that's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to, that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that we could spend the next hour educating people about all of the background that's led us to this point, or we could move towards trying to reach a final conclusion so that the whole of the ecosystem can move forward.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so
I think the answer to that question was really useful, actually, in terms of sort of clarifying what the goals are of having these components, because it's not obvious why you need these three components, but you do.
So the main thing that I want to know then, which was what I raised my hand for, was Dodger said that what Zynga has proposed is a slightly different architecture. So I would like to hear from them what they see as the difference in their architecture relative to what we just described.
Yes.
So I think one of the main things that I kind of got from what we've been designing is that we would be designing essentially a remote interface for the restate service in Zebra with like a one-to-one functionality, which would mean any CLI wallet would be able to either use Zebra's restate service directly if they're going to run all processes on kind of one bit of hardware, or they could separate off having the validator run on one piece of hardware and the wallet run on another, and then use the remote service for that. So that's kind of the indexer RPC box. And then I think it was also thought it would be a good, to unify how the Light Wallet service gets its data. So it'd be building that service directly off the restate service instead of the JSON RPC interface in Zebra. It's also, I don't think it'd be that much more work to implement that gRPC service. We've done quite a lot of the preliminary work for that, and also done some preliminary work to enable that service over the NIM mixnet, which is something I definitely am eager to see happen. So I think those are kind of the reasons for our design and kind of how we'd like to implement it.
So to clarify, the primary difference from what was described in the other diagram is that inside what you've labeled Zano here, but in the indexer box, there also exists a Light Wallet server, but otherwise
yeah,
it's the
so
same
there'll
kind of
be-
architecture. Or is
yeah,
there
so there'll be a
are there other architectural changes?
No, essentially that's the main one. I think this is something kind of we've had a few meetings now, kind of narrowing it down. And essentially, I think what Arya put down is very good. But just adding in the kind of Light Wallet side to that.
Conrado, you want to say something?
Yeah. I think one important thing to keep in mind is that there is the abstract design and there's the concrete design, right? So when we talk about an indexer, this could mean like a process, like Zino here in this diagram, or it could be something like a crate which is linked to the wallet, right? And then there won't be a separate process, right? So my first question was, in the previous weeks, I thought we were converging to the idea that the indexer would be like a crate, which is linked to the wallet and could use the zero state crate from Zebra. So the solution, there will be the wallet process and the Zebra process, and that's it, right? But now I think we have shifted for a design where there is a separate process for the indexer. And this process is basically like the Light Wallet server, right? But maybe done differently, as I understand. So I have two questions, right? The first question is, do we really want to do this? Do we really want to create an indexer, a separate process? And the second question is, if we want to do that, why can't we just simply use the existing Go Light Wallet D? Do we need to rewrite it? I think these are important things we need to answer before advancing the design.
Right. So it's a technical question whether the existing Light Wallet gRPC interface is sufficient for the wallets that we want to build as a Zcash replacement. Obviously, we're already using it for some existing wallets, but those don't have all of the functionality of Zcash. So I think Strad is probably best placed to answer that.
Yeah, it is currently the case that the Light Wallet RPC as it currently exists is not sufficient to provide all the functionality that a Zcash wallet replacement needs. It could be extended in various ways with various deficiencies to do that, but having some other access to the index estate is a need to serve the underlying requirements, given the current state of Light Wallet D. So
yeah,
if we were to base it on Light Wallet D, it would need to be extended. Whereas basing it on something like the Zebra state or whatever that base crate is likely to it's a difference in where you're focusing your energy, but that state service likely already has a bunch of the information that we need here that is currently not reachable and accessible through the Light Wallet service.
Yeah, so the trade-off here is, do we concentrate on a new thing that probably is going to be a lot more maintainable going forward, or do we try and extend Light Wallet D to provide an adequate interface? My intuition is that the first option is better, but it does depend on exactly how much we would have to extend the Go Light Wallet D. Basically, I want this architecture as it's shown with a separate process anyway. And the question is, do we need it in the short term or do we only need it in the medium term?
I think Arya had his hand up, so I'll ask him to speak next.
Exactly how much would we have to extend the existing Lightwall Deco implementation? Is it just those two methods for the new indices that we've talked about with the spent outputs and the nullifiers leading to the transactions that spend them? Or is there more? Is there anything in the C validation interface that we need to add to the indexer RPC service?
I can't tell you offhand what would need to be added where, because Lightwallet D was not built to provide this kind of information. So there would be the need to route it through both on JSON RPC and on gRPC side, as well as whatever internal machinations are necessary inside there, which I am not familiar with. But to just go back to the point that Conrado asked about, I don't personally see the distinction of it being a crate that is bundled into Zebra versus being a separate process as a huge distinction. The main difference it makes is whether we have to have some sort of IPC, for what's labeled on there as like finalized state chain, notified state, like the communication layer between them. As long as there's a logical separation inside Zebra, I don't think it matters if initially it's still part of Zebra. If there's a direction to be able to separate it.
I think Arya suggested it would be part of the wallet. But I mean, it could be either. Which process you put it in is not, to me, the critical thing, because you need to write almost the same code anyway, and you just need to write a little bit of extra code to make it accessible over RPC.
I'd like to hop in and disagree with Strad, because that's exciting. I like disagreeing with Strad. I think it does matter a fair amount, not whether it's a crate or a process, but where that crate lives, because typically or ideally crates have a single stakeholder. And I think decentralization is very desirable here. Secondly, to Arya's point about enumerating the already necessary functionality that Lightwallet D would need, I think it's critical to point out that we're talking about right now, in this moment, we already know Lightwallet D is insufficient. And we're trying to build a system that is resilient to future environments.
I lost track a little bit of which order people had raised their hands in. So if you've already, please lower your hand if you already have said what you want to say. Otherwise, I'll let Strad respond maybe, and then Arya, and then Paku.
The point I was making about crate versus process was not about how you develop it. It was about how you deploy it. Those are two orthogonal aspects of it, and the development side should be a separate discussion from the architecture side. Okay, so this hand, what did I raise this hand for? Yeah, this hand was about the front end piece, which we haven't really talked about yet. The constraint that we are likely to have from getting this out to people, specifically the big current users of Zcash D wallets that we are trying to migrate off, is going to be that whatever is provided here needs to have some kind of JSON RPC interface that lines up with or has minimal impedance mismatch to what they currently use. So when we talk about a CLI wallet, I want to just be clear what we mean by CLI wallet. My understanding of that, and I want to make sure that the proposal from Zinco is either on the same page or not on the same page, then we figure out what that difference is that functionally, there is a wallet service that runs that is actually responsible for holding the key material, and maybe is where scanning happens, maybe that's extractable, that's a separate piece there, but the key thing is it manages the wallet keys and wallet state. And then there is some mechanism for poking it and making it do things. And that mechanism could be a CLI interface for working with it, but would also likely need to have, in some fashion, a JSON RPC interface that existing users can transition to relatively simply. So does that line up with what's on this proposed diagram, or are there other differences being proposed that we need to discuss?
So we were asked to remove all wallet development from this grant and just have this grant be for the remote indexing service, which is the Zino box.
That is very good to know.
Yeah. We were told that there was an ongoing discussion and it would be best to wait. And if it's decided that, I think we're all very up for doing that work. But it depends. Yeah, it's the case of whether people want us to do that work. So we were told to remove it from this grant for now, put in a grant just for the Zino work. And then if it's decided that people want us to also develop that Clue wallet, then we'd, I guess, put in a separate grant for that.
Great. I'm glad I brought this up then, because that significantly changes how I'm looking at this right now. So the intention then is for this meeting is to focus on Zino as the proposed indexer within the architecture. Cool.
That's the current grant, yeah. I think the kind of decision was to wait, kind of hold fire to work out exactly what's going on with Zenith and some other kind of wallet options, and then depending on those discussions, come back to the Clear wallet grant.
I do think we need to talk a little bit about wallets, because some of the existing wallets are not going to be capable of exchange usage, because they're just not designed to hold the number of transparent addresses that exchanges use. And so we need to not box ourselves into a corner where we don't have anything to support that use case.
Yeah, but at the same time, given what was said earlier about proposed within the Zano box, combined with what we were sketching out about what the role of an indexer is, the indexer node, or whatever it ends up being focused on public information, means that the main constraint there from a large user's perspective is making sure that it is able to provide those indices in as reasonable a way as possible for whatever wallet consumer there ends up being. And in particular, it also means we don't need to consider JSON RPC at all for that box, because the wallets will be talking to the wallet process, like the existing exchanges usages will be talking to the wallet process and don't necessarily need to talk directly to Zano.
I just want to remind everyone of the queue. I think it was Paku next, and then Doja has his hand raised.
Right. Yeah. I was a little bit confused about the CLI, the CLI wallet conversation. I thank you for clarifying that was off the table. As I understand, I think the main advantage of having an indexer part that it's independent of any other component, like that being either the wallet or the node, is that it gives us a broader range of possibilities. Like we don't know, when you couple this indexing service to one of those, we're kind of limiting other possible users or uses, not users, like use cases. So if the indexer is something on its own, then it's easier to have, for example, data transformers that can implement or either the RPC services, or whatever other kind of data or API that is needed to help all Zcash users or wallet users or all users to migrate to the new architecture. So keeping that uncoupled, it's a really good way to go, and in my point of view, at least. And also keeping it independent helps anyone needing to use Zino as for example, integration testing platform to actually kind of do what we were doing with Darkside Wallet and have end-to-end testing that is easy to set up and easy to test like edge cases. So I really support like Zino being a thing on its own, rather than being like tied to either a wallet process or the node. That's it.
Dojo, go ahead.
I seem to recall that one of the main reasons for suggesting that the indexer process that the wallet queries should be separate from the node is to avoid a some form of attack. The name of it escapes me, but Dara, I'm sure will chime in a moment.
Yeah, there was a similar attack against Zcash called the ping reject attack, so that was originally to do with using ping or reject messages from the network to do timing attacks, but there are generalizations of it that depend on sort of locking interactions between the wallet side of Zcash and the full node side of Zcash, and at the moment we kind of use a horrible hack to separate them, even though they're in the same process. Doing it using an indexer, I mean, to go on to the point that I had my hand up for, this is basically the architecture that I've always wanted it to be, and thought was the right way of doing it almost from the start. And we just never had time to implement it in Zcash.
Yeah, the second thing I wanted to say is that we need to discuss whether including the Light Wallet D gRPC service in this indexer, whether it's Zano or the Zbroid service, whether that's on the critical path for Zcash deprecation or whether it's just a nice to have. And then finally, I want to highlight that Renee from the Zenith Wallet project is here. And I think it was Za who suggested or was questioning whether Zenith could be useful in this context. And I think the key question there is if we're going to propose or suggest that something could be used as a wallet interface, we need to determine whether or not it's capable of handling the exchange use case, which is tens, possibly hundreds of thousands of addresses. I don't know if if Renee
can I
wants
address
to talk about that.
the Light Wallet D thing first? So if we don't put the Light Wallet D interface in Zano, then we still need it, and no one wants to maintain the Go Light Wallet D. It will be significantly more complex for to have to access both a Light Wallet D and a separate indexer process. I don't think that makes sense given how relatively simple it is to make Zano provide the Light Wallet D interface. I mean, perhaps someone from Zingo can comment on the sort of relative complexity of adding that part of that interface to Zano.
I think once you have the interface with the restate service set up and kind of you can get all the data from that, there's not a lot of work to actually implement those gRPC services.
That was my impression too.
Yeah.
Sa has had his hand up for a while. Oh, they've lowered it. Okay. Dodger, you still have any more points to make? Your hand is up. And then Darana, I believe.
No.
Go ahead.
I'd already made my point.
Okay. So I guess, I don't know if Renee wants to address the question whether Zenith Wallet could cope with the exchange use case.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So, just like a quick review, I don't think anything would prevent us from doing that. We are storing the addresses in a database. We can handle large amounts of those addresses. I think the question is really going to be more about performance, and it would be great if we could have a little better more details on the use case of, how often are they trying to scan those hundreds of thousands of T addresses to understand exactly where would be the limitation of performing that. But I think
Okay, that's a good point. I'll put it on my to-do list to ask our exchange contacts about that.
The performance questions tend to come not so much from the number of addresses, but the number of notes or coins, outputs related to those that need to be tracked. I remember this was years ago, but I probably still have it lying around somewhere, putting together a test wallet for Zcash or a pair of test wallets, one of which I think what I simulated there was like 200,000 individual notes, because the limitations here are primarily to do with performance under keeping shielded notes and transparent coins and things tracked from a spendability perspective, and then note selection is the other main constraint. And so that was I had a test architecture that we used for finding and optimizing performance problems in Zcash. So that might be a useful test artifact to migrate once we have a way of migrating wallet.dats from Zcash into another format. That might be something that could be pulled from. But in the meantime, you might be able to extract, manually extract the data from that to be able to play around with it from a testing perspective.
I mean, it's worth pointing out that Zcash actually does not have very good performance for this UK use case, and we had lots of complaints from exchange users about that. And my impression is that some of them found ways to work around it, and some of them just wrote their own code and now only rely on Zcash sort of as a full node proper. But unfortunately, I don't have as much detail about that as I'd like. I think partly because exchanges tend to be quite cagey about their internal architecture.
Arlo has their hand up, and then Saf.
Yeah, one question I had about Zenith is, how do you actually get your data from the node? Because one worry I had for the exchange use case is if it's going through some sort of RPC interface, is that going to slow things down too much? Like, do we want to provide a wallet that can have direct access to the ZebraDB? So yeah, that's something I don't know how kind of hard that would be due to it be written in Haskell rather than Rust.
Yeah, we currently are using the Zebra RPCs to get the data.
But I mean, if you use the Zebra RPCs to get the data as it's coming in, then you're then storing it in a form that is easy to index. That's the whole point of the indexer. So it's not as though you necessarily have a large bandwidth between the indexer and the full node in the steady state.
Yeah, there is a question though around from a how it is used perspective, what as has just very kind of been drawn on there on the red line, the arrows that go through the red line are relevant to the scope, even if the boxes inside the red box are outside scope. The arrows that go through the box to communicate with them have to be manageable in some way. So that is an advantage of adding Lightwallet gRPC in as a initial point, because then the core of the state service can at least be tested with existing mobile wallets.
That's very important.
We have a known reference that is consuming Lightwallet D backed by Zebra or Zcash, and we can ensure that continues to work as the indexer is developed. while the indexer RPC service that is better suited to conveying the necessary information to the desired full node cases can be developed. So that would be one nice approach for it, that, you know, presuming as was said, that adding the gRPC service APIs is simple once you have all the data indexed there, which I would presume is significantly easier than is the case in LightWallet, which is essentially doing, yeah, LightWallet is sort of partly an indexer itself, but it's misses a lot of the stuff and it relies on the full nodes for a lot of stuff. Whereas having a unified indexer that can be extended as necessary, you know, can load additional indexes in as it needs and be resilient to rollbacks and all that is going to make for a much nicer way to then expose data as we need to.
I agree.
Sai,
Also,
you want to say something?
I think that question mark should also be gRPC.
Well, maybe.
This is really a question for Zynga.
I like the gRPC option. I think some other options have been put forward, but that would be my preference.
It's certainly simpler if we just have one RPC protocol.
Go ahead, Sa. You've been waiting a while.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure my interjection didn't cut into this, you know, more context-rich conversation. It jumps back to, I think, Paku's point earlier, and there's a lot of talk about needing to support centralized exchange wallets that have a huge number of transparent addresses, which is probably because they're just using the legacy Bitcoin style generate tons of T addresses architecture. I just wanted to say, you know, use cases, ideally we're going to handle all use cases, but we have a limited amount of resources and some use cases are going to be lower priority than others. And I'm concerned that when we get pushback from exchanges saying, you know, Zcash is too slow for us because we have these large numbers of coins, I'm concerned that we are building for yesterday's problem and looking at the wrong use case. So I'm not sure, I don't have data, but I think we need to keep in mind the migration towards DEXs.
I mean, I agree completely. We should consider migration towards DEXs. So for the exchange case, which is actually the blocker to deprecating Zcash, because DEXs are not a blocker to deprecating Zcash. For those, we can try and persuade them to use shielded addresses for deposits, because then you can obviously scan just using one incoming viewing key an arbitrary number of addresses. And so that would potentially solve their performance problem, but I'm not optimistic about the chances of kind of persuading them to do that.
I guess so it's pointed out that the current Zcash doesn't do a terribly good job from the centralized exchange perspective, and it's kind of a pain in the butt. And in order to deprecate it, we need to build something that's probably at least that good, or at least good enough that they will use it. And I think we should definitely not expend any effort beyond that to support that particular use case. Doesn't need to be better.
I mean, well, they're basically not going to make any major changes in what they do.
Yeah,
that's my impression. That they may be able to stop using certain APIs that we won't support anymore, but that's about it, really.
Right. Yeah, I'm just concerned about the opportunity cost to other use cases, to designing and building for other use cases.
I think
I don't think we have the option to kind of just ignore all centralized exchanges and say we're only going to concentrate on DEXs anymore. So basically we have to build this functionality anyway.
Okay, so it's Dodger, then Paku, then Jack on the queue.
Yeah, I think we should be clear on what the objective is, and building something that doesn't cater for the existing centralized exchanges who rely on Zcashd is not the objective. That may be a different project that people want to pursue. Also, the quickest path to a DEX for Zcash is to unblock the deployment of ZSAs so that we can then add in the asset swaps functionality, which will turn the Zcash network into one giant DEX. So, I just want to highlight that we have very specific objectives here, and we should not be letting the desire to achieve perfection stand in the way of us making progress towards the objectives that we have. And if we need to rediscuss those objectives, that's fine. But I don't think they're going to change any day soon.
I mostly agree, but also we don't want to build something that is unmaintainable. So we should be looking to design this in a way that is going to be extensible and maintainable, and people will actually want to maintain, which I think means so that the architecture that's on the screen with a Rust implementation of Zeno as opposed to continuing to rely on the Go like WalletD.
Paku, you wanted to say something? And just to remind them, it's Jack, then Marek, then Renee. Go ahead, Paku.
Yeah, but basically, my experience reaching out exchanges is that they are juggling many balls in the air, and that they'll do as least effort as they can, and so we should take that into consideration. Also, although I agree with that DEX support is super important for the future, also in order to bring most of the Zcash supply into a DEX, we need to get it out from centralized exchanges. I don't know how much of the ZEC supply is on centralized exchanges on its transparent form. I guess that quite a lot, given the poor support of hardware wallets that we have, and and other kind of like custody or custodial services. So probably what we want to achieve is to have the least bumpy Zcash deprecation as we can. Maybe try to support as much of the existing RPCs as they are, not maybe fully, maybe adapting the interfaces through data transformation or something like that, so that we have like the least disruption as possible, given that we're like limited, we have limited resources to deal with any bumps, and the least we have to deal with deployment bumps and disruptions, the more we can do towards the future use cases. So, and that's kind of like how I envision we can achieve that, and I think that we can achieve that with this architecture proposed. And
I mean,
then we can worry about the future.
I would be very surprised if we didn't lose some exchanges. We'd be very lucky to keep all of the exchanges, but obviously we want to keep as many of them as possible.
Okay, so to try and sort of pull this back around in the tail end of the meeting towards actionable feedback on the proposal here. The main thing I would want to ensure for an indexer like Zeno is that if or when we discover that new indices are necessary for a particular use case, it is easy to add those in. Currently in Zcashd, if you're running a Zcashd node and then you discover that you need a different index, you have to completely start the consensus node again from scratch, and that is a significant both just a foot gun for using people, and it is also significant DOS on exchange services, for instance, that depend on access to data. So
yeah, to the extent that they'll basically refuse to do it.
Yeah, so keeping the indexer resilient against, or yeah, keeping the resiliency between the full node being able to just like be deployed and then just essentially run as it needs to, and then when the indexer wants or needs information, it is able to, like, it can be restarted on its own. It can have quick startup. It could do maybe live reindexing of certain bits on the fly. That's stuff that could be figured out within that, and it doesn't all need to be rolled in initially. But having that in mind while implementing the initial thing would be, I think, very useful here, and is also relevant to the top right question mark here of the Zcash RPC service in terms of how the indexer communicates with the full with the consensus node from that perspective. And then I guess the other piece I would say is that similarly on the front end side, but I think this was already mentioned, was just like making sure that the I agree with Paku, and I think Dodger might have said something to this effect as well, of enabling other use cases, pluggable use cases within the front end. The gRPC services are one way of doing that, but I'm also thinking of the number of block explorers that they need an indexer service as well. They're built on that. That's where Zcashd's indices came from, was sort of being imported from one of those projects. And having a thing that we can similarly, like if people want to use it to power their for public information about the chain, that would be a very useful service to end up with from this. To that point, which just occurred to me, my other suggestion, then I'll put my mic down, is making sure that the front end gRPCs, so at the bottom end of this box, do not expose full node control APIs. That's a core problem with JSON RPC, with the way that the Zcashd inherited from Bitcoin JSON RPC. If you expose the JSON RPC, you get full access to control the full node, which is bad. And is the main reason why when people go, hey, is there a public RPC we can query? The answer is generally no, because no one puts the Zcashd JSON RPC online. Whereas if the index or RPC service box on this diagram is designed such that it can be safely put online and be a public source of information, that makes it more likely that people can run these indexer nodes and offer them as like public services or paid services if you want to provide a better uptimes or something to a particular enterprise consumer, and it being something that can just be easily deployed without foot guns.
Yes.
With those sort of 3 points, other than that, I'm pretty happy with this as a proposal.
So this is not an architecture question, but it's more of an implementation question. The question mark on the left at the top, was that intended to be direct database access or an RPC?
So I believe the restate service in Zebra does have direct read access to Zebra's RocksDB.
Okay.
But does that then incur the timing attack issue?
We believe not, because we believe that it's possible to open the database in such a way that it can be, it's basically one process is writing and other processes can read. And we need to look very carefully at the issues there. But I think that how that is implemented is the reading process basically just looks at the logs. So it's kind of a snapshot isolation model. And so it is possible to do that without logs, but that is something that we need to look at very carefully.
Marek, you lowered your hand. Is there anything you want to say, or you're fine?
No, I wanted to comment on the question marks, on the 2 question marks there, but we started talking about that already.
Okay, thank you, Marek. Renee, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if we have a better understanding of that exchange use case, it wasn't originally on our plan for Zenith, but I think we're in a good position where we could kind of like address that edge case without taking everyone else's team, the time of the other teams that are building more forward-looking infrastructure like this. And they need something that's a little more specific for what they do, which is probably going to be heavily on transparent addresses and generating them, managing them, and scanning for them. We could look into that, so we can provide that on top of Zebra nodes for the exchanges.
Thank you, Renee. We have just over 10 minutes left if you want to finish on time. Marek, you've got your hand raised now, and then Conrado.
Yeah, so back to the question marks. So if Zeno is going to be its own process and written in Rust, then it can use the Zebra state crate to read Zebra's database directly. That's basically the question mark on the left. And that will give full read-only access to all Zebra's database, and then the question mark on the right is basically JSON RPCs to sync the mempool data and the most recent 100 blocks in the blockchain.
We may not want to keep it as JSON RPCs, but that would be a reasonable way to start at the to start getting things going. To get back to Dodger's question but on the right hand side, because the relevant the kinds of attacks that are relevant for the timing things are what matters is that they're network observable. So any update to the state that is being read by the indexer that happens necessarily in line with responses to peer-to-peer network peers needs to avoid being blocked on wallet operations. So if I understand the intention of the split between the read state service and the indexer state service, the intention here is that then the Zebra state logic is essentially going to become the core state for the consensus nodes that is necessary to run the consensus node, and then the indexer would be then post-processing that as it comes into the indices that it is then exposing downstream. And what that means is then the reads that are occurring of the indexer via the lower APIs from wallets they will be occurring on different databases than the ones that the indexer is querying, which provides a sort of a buffer in between, which is probably sufficient to eliminate, to prevent that particular timing attack. So the JSON RPCs have the same thing there, where they need to feed into the same indices that are being built. But as long as there is some separation of buffer thing there, where the wallets don't learn the information in line blocking the network layer, then we eliminate that particular avenue.
Yes. And RocksDB in recent versions does support, there's an explicit API that you need to use to try catch up with primary that a secondary database can use to catch up with updates from the writing process.
Conrado, you've had your hand up for a while, and then it's
Yeah, I feel like the next step here, or at least in my mind, is the bottom right question mark is mapping out what exactly is missing, right? Just for the sake of explanation, assuming we are using the Golite Wallet server, right? What's missing from it? What it needs to be added for it to support the Zcash client backend? This also think it's important. I think it's set into stone that we're using the Zcash client backend in the wallet, right? I think it's good to make that clear. So yeah, if we map out what is missing from the current Light Wallet, we can get a better understanding if what exactly Zyno needs to do right and what exactly is the need to measure between extending the current Go implementation or doing a new one, right? Maybe like it's super easy to do that, and I think I understand everyone hates the Go server, but maybe it's easy, right? And that would make sense to keep it, just extend it and then replace it later, or not?
Yeah, yeah, that might make sense if it's sufficiently feasible work just to do both. And then that removes the blockage on Zano being fully implemented.
For this direct database access, does Zebra and Zano need to run on the same machine?
So in order to use that, Zano would need to have access to the same file system.
We plan to
Not
have
necessarily the same machine.
So we plan to have a backup crate that can be used that will use the JSON RPC service, so you could run it on a different machine if you wanted. A lot of that's already in there essentially. So there's going to be very little work to finish that functionality off, and then by default it'll run kind of directly using the restate service, but you could run it and it will get its data from the JSON RPC interface.
Yeah, that'll be nice, because certainly for the things I mentioned before of like rebuilding indices and whatnot, direct data, the ability to do direct data access is going to make that so much easier to do performantly.
Yeah, I mean since this is a performance issue, maybe we should not prematurely optimize and just try and get the JSON RPC version of it working first.
Well, if they're both there, then they're both working. So.
Yeah, what you can already do in the read state service is to provide a directory path for opening the database, and then you're good to go. That's the current state.
Oh, and that already uses the secondary database functionality, does it?
Yeah, it uses the RuxDB read-only mode.
That's a slightly different thing, because if I understand correctly, the read-only mode, all processes need to be read-only, and in this case, obviously, Zebra needs to write to the database, and then the secondaries need to catch up, which there's an API for them to do, but I don't know whether that's what's already implemented.
It is what's already implemented.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
Zah? Oh, Zah's hand went away.
Is read
I'm
state
here.
service in the right location on this diagram?
It's a crate in Zebra, but it's a crate that we will use as a dependency in Zyno. So there's code there that will be running in the Zyno process.
Hey. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
The ZCG wanted me to run my upfront ask numbers by this chat. So I'm gonna paste those in the channel so people can see what we're asking for. If that's all right. I just want to break that down quickly. So Arlo began working on what is intended to be Zino on January 13th. You can look at his GitHub. And I was billing him at $80 an hour. So for the retroactive, I have $80 an hour, 160 hours a month, 8 months. I multiplied by 1.5 there. So instead of just Arlo working on this, I wanted to include our contributions to Reg Test Mode and Zebra and contributions to Libra Zcash over the last 8 months that we have been doing that are, I think, directly relevant to Zcash deprecation. I don't think we can deprecate Zcash D without Reg Test Mode, for example, in the replacement. So that is a retroactive ask for services rendered of about
it's
153,600. Yeah, 152,600. Then I've recruited 3 new to Zcash, not just new to Zingo, new developers who I anticipate working directly on Zcash deprecation for 6 months for $30,000. They're new, but I think that's an amazing price tag and it should be supported by the community. And then we're asking for equipment to test Zino 12,000 and to give laptops to the new guys. So that is our upfront ask.
And so that's upfront. What's the overall?
Overall, Arlo can give the 3 milestone numbers. I think would make sense. They are 38.4, 44.8, and 38.4.
Okay, so that's
121.
overall. Yeah, okay. That seems fine to me.
Okay, we're almost at time. We can continue the discussion, but I assume some people will have to drop off. I just wanted to wrap things up a little bit and try to understand whether we have a final architecture that we can agree on. Obviously, the numbers for the grant are not really something we can comment on here. This is about protocol development.
Right.
So can we agree on a CLI wallet architecture that teams can start working on in order to unblock or to progress with Zcash deprecation?
I mean, I agree that this is a useful thing to build, and it's maintainable for the future, and I have no issues with this.
I think if this is set in stone, doesn't that offer constraints on what that CLI wallet will look like? Isn't this a step towards that?
I mean, yes, it given that it's the output of this is those two gRPC or whatever interfaces, then the CLI wallet or whatever you want to call it is going to have to consume those. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you got that wallet consuming only the indexer service and not the indexer service and also the like wallet GPC. That might not actually be how we do it, but
yeah, my understanding was originally that the CLI wallet was going to be designed to use essentially the data that the restate service provides so that it could run on the restate service directly if it was going to all run on the same hardware, or you could
I see.
And then we'd like implement a remote end for those services. But
I don't
I'm
think we
very
need to
happy for
decide
it to
that.
be a different implementation of just like implementing the gRPC services for the extra data that we need.
Yeah, this gets back to the point I was making before of the as long as that front end plugin, which where those RPCs are, is relatively modular, then we can, if we discover there's other things we need to access in the index estate service later on in the wallet piece, it becomes very easy to add them.
Yeah, I think if we have access to the read state service and all of that data, and then we're implementing like a gRPC server, it's very easy to add extra services and build whatever indices we need.
Conrado's had his hand up for a while, and then Aria.
Yeah, just to say that I'm happy with this architecture. Just keep in mind what Strada mentioned, that it'd be good like to have options in the future, like if we want to get rid of a separate process and actually linking it with the wallet, it'd be good. But we don't need to worry about this. But I just think we good to keep in mind that that should be a possibility.
Yeah.
But I have with the architecture, yes.
Just like as another thing to throw out on that point, a complaint that I've seen in the web wallet space with gRPC is that it's actually quite difficult to interact directly with it. So there might be a desire to have like a WebSocket based interface, for instance. But again, if everything is through the index estate service, that makes that a lot easier.
Yeah.
Aria, do you want to go ahead next?
I'm also happy with this architecture. I just want to mention that we should, if we're using the read state service to support the Light Wallet gRPC service, copy a lot of code from Zebra RPC over, because it's going to be very similar logic.
Okay, so it seems like we've arrived at consensus, and might be a good point then to move on with the call. And wrap it up essentially. So let me see if I can try to take control back from Georgia to share my screen. Okay, so open discussion. I think let's skip that for today. We're already over time. And just to say that thank you very much for your time and attention during this call. And the next one will be on the 3rd of October at 21 UTC. See you then.
See you all then. Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye,
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.